Hello, you're watching Solo Bass, and this is TCK Gets Real. This is a series where I'm going to talk about what it's kind of like to be a TCK. TCK stands for Third Culture Kid. It's a strange way to describe a person who grew up, who lived their formative years outside of the country of birth, or perhaps rather outside of their home country, although it could be both. Growing up, my family was often on the move. Since I was 7 years old, I grew up in Quebec. My parents were from Ontario. And then when I was 7, they moved to Thailand. You know, I have to say that this whole video series isn't supposed to be a sob story. In a lot of ways, I suppose I am blessed to be this type of person that has grown up outside of the home country. But being a TCK has a different kind of pain. A pain that most people can't relate to. One of the keys of this video series is I hope to be able to relate my pain to others who've perhaps gone through the same, or give a clear understanding to those people who are in relationships with TCKs and don't really quite understand why they are the way they are. There are different things that have been said about those of us that we are a bit aloof, seem to be proud. Maybe this could perhaps give you viewers a chance to understand some of the things that we went through in our formative years that might have been different from what you went through. I'm not trying to make you think that you need to feel sorry for me in any way of sense. I went through the TCK experience very hard-headedly. I resisted it at first. I couldn't stand being away. I was angry. I did things that were probably not very good, self-destructive behaviors, for sure, starting at a very young age. I was an angry kid, and I didn't get along well with people. I was very awkward socially, especially trying to adapt to a new environment. To be honest, from the beginning it didn't go so well. But what this video is about is best friends. I'll be looking at different aspects of being a TCK, and this one looks at the aspect of the fact that because we're moving around a lot, we're never in the same place, we always get shuffled around, it's inevitable that we lose friends, that we lose the people that we came to know, that we love. This is about the difficulty of that, or maybe what some people might call a blessing of being able to have many best friends, but I would definitely not call it a blessing. You know, I learned at a very early age how to cope with losing a best friend, or losing friends, period. See, when I was 7, I moved to Thailand. I wouldn't say I had a best friend at the time. I had some good friends. My best friend was probably a girl, but because she was a girl, she wasn't really allowed to be my best friend at the time, because at the time, being friends with girls wasn't very cool, obviously. No, my best friend, sort of at the time, was the guy who was like me in that he liked Ninja Turtles. I loved Ninja Turtles. Growing up, I loved Ninja Turtles. And this guy's name is Dave Guimau. I'm going to show his picture. And Dave wrote me once when I was in Thailand. I think I wrote to him. We sent each other packages once, I believe. He sent me a Ninja Turtle or two, which was great. This guy had a ton of Ninja Turtles. I had a few, very few. Lucky that I had gotten one for my birthday just before I left, which I lost at the hotel in Korea at the stopover. But after that, nothing. After that, it was just kind of like, you forget, you know, it's tough, but you really forget when you don't get to spend time with that person. You really forget about them, and you kind of have to move on because the relationship's not the same when there's that distance there. We're not any longer able to spend time with them in a valuable way. Growing up in Thailand for the next 4 years after we moved, not even in the same place, 2 years in the capital, Bangkok, and 2 years in one of the most remote places you could think of in Thailand, in the northeast, right up at the border of Laos and Thailand, on the Mekong River. I could see Laos right from my window. At least in Bangkok, there were other people who are also kids of people working there. But once we moved up into the northeast, it was just me and all the Thai people. And to be honest, I didn't learn Thai. I didn't want to learn Thai. I didn't want to be in Thailand, and I had a terrible attitude. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't like the food. That's besides the point. I didn't make a best friend those 4 years. It wasn't until we returned to Canada for an entire year, this would be during grade 6, that I made the best friend. My first real best friend, whose name is Jonathan Sum. Here's a picture of him right here, yeah? Jonathan Sum and I hung out all the time. Yeah, we were kind of like the outcasts in our class. Right from the get-go, the kids realized I wasn't cool, I wasn't like them, I was an outcast. Jonathan Sum, to some degree, was also like that. He was not Canadian by birth. He was actually, came to Canada when he was very young, I believe, and his parents came from China. He grew up most of his life in Canada though, but he still had that same experience, similar experience of having lived outside of your home country. I think to some degree the reason why we were such great friends was because of that similarity. We had some similar interests. We spent so much time together. We had sleepovers, we had the whole shebang. We hung out a lot. And there wasn't a time where it didn't seem like we were good friends. But as time passed and the due date for me to leave Canada once again, because we were only to be there for 1 year, kind of like a home vacation except for with more work than you actually have in Thailand. That whole thing, I don't think Jonathan realized how much it would impact him that I was leaving. I don't think I realized it either at the time. I was there for 1 year. I came into his life. I probably was a valuable part of his life during that time and probably lost a lot when I left. I think I might have been very insensitive to that fact. Probably didn't even realize it. I was already so used to moving and knowing that that was part of my life. But for him, he only made one move, probably when he was extremely young. So he still had that feeling like not really knowing what it's like to lose friends as much as I did. So I should have known. But you know, I can feel really bad for it right now, and I can really totally understand how sucky it must have been for him. I wonder how much that affected him. I really would like to talk to him and know that if it did, you know, it affected me a lot. I didn't have another best friend until 2 years later. After that year in Canada, which was a great year, mind you, tons better than I'd ever had in Thailand. Even though I still was on the outside, I had developed some kind of cred because I was really good at jumping and running. I was fast and somewhat athletic. So by the end of that year, I was actually starting to get involved with other people, and people were accepting me more and more. If you will, I was getting cool, or I had finally begun to adapt. And guess what? Time to go. Off to boarding school, where it took me 2 years to get to a similar point in time. It was much more difficult for me to adapt at boarding school. Yeah, boarding school in Malaysia, it sucked. It had some moments, but it sucked. And that could be for another vlog feature point. In Thailand, once again, after 2 years in Malaysia, decided that boarding school wasn't the thing for me. And then went back to Thailand for homeschool. That time we lived in Bangkok again. We're living in Bangkok again. And I met a friend through the church that I was going to at the time at the youth group. And his name was Yubi. His name is Yubi. He's still alive, obviously. Yubi was a refugee. He came from Iran. He was a kid. He was a son of a couple, and he had a sister. And their family wanted to move to the States. And what happens a lot of the time with some of these families that want to go to the States, they get ripped off. Somebody cons them to take their money, says to them, we're going to get you to the States, take them somewhere, like Malaysia, but then never really finish the deal, never seal the deal, and just take all the money and run. So Yubi spent a lot of time in Malaysia as a refugee, and then he was sent to Thailand with his family also to live as a refugee. And they spent years before they were allowed to go somewhere. Years. I mean, if there's one thing I've learned from being friends with certain people in Thailand is that the refugee process sucks ass. It sucks ass. But it also sucked ass that my best friend at the time was destined, or rather wanted to leave Thailand. So I was friends with a ticking clock, if you will. I just didn't know when the bomb was going to burst and I would lose my best friend. And vice versa. I mean, that's just the way it goes in my life. And I think Yubi understood that a bit more, so maybe he wasn't quite as upset when the separation happened. Actually, the separation happened a bit earlier than it should have. When I had my first girlfriend, things kind of went south. If anyone can understand how that is, that first relationship really ends up taking up a lot of your time, and your best friend kind of gets left on the side. And I feel really guilty about that, because the Yubi man, he was a great friend of mine. And once again, tons of sleepovers. I stayed over his house, tons. Stayed over at my place, tons. We did lots of things together. He showed me the ropes in Thailand. He really showed me what was great about Bangkok. He took me on the bus, showed me how to ride the bus. He showed me what places were cool and how to have fun in Thailand. He really encouraged me to get out there, and if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't love Bangkok nearly as much as I do today, because that time I was still a noob at Thailand. I was still a noob. I just wanted to stay at home in my comfort zone. But Yubi really brought me out there. I mean, if it wasn't for him, I would have never met my first girlfriend probably in the first place.